Somewhere along the way, the church decided that depression was a spiritual problem. That if you were genuinely close to God, genuinely faithful, genuinely trusting, you would not feel this way. That the darkness was evidence of distance. That the weight was a symptom of weak faith. And millions of people sitting in pews with that weight have heard that message spoken or unspoken and added shame to everything else they were already carrying. This video is not going to tell you depression is simple. It is not going to give you 3 steps to feeling better. It is not going to pretend that a verse quoted at the right moment fixes what years of darkness have built. What it is going to do is show you what the Bible actually says about depression. Not what the church has sometimes taught, what the text says. And what the text says will surprise you, because the Bible does not treat depression as a faith failure. It treats it as a human reality. And the people inside it in Scripture are not rebuked for being there, they are met. Before we get into specific passages, one thing needs to be said clearly. The Bible does not use the word depression. It is a modern clinical term. But the Bible is full of people experiencing what we would recognize as depression, the darkness, the emptiness, the loss of desire, the inability to see forward, the exhaustion that sleep does not fix, the sense that God is absent or silent or has turned away. These are not obscure passages tucked in the margins. They are in the Psalms, which are the prayer book of the Bible, the most prayed, most sung, most memorized texts in all of Scripture. They are in the lives of the most significant figures in the Old and New Testament: Elijah, David, Jeremiah, Job, Paul. Not fringe characters, not cautionary tales, central figures. Heroes of the faith who experienced something that looked very much like what millions of people experience today. And the way God responds to them consistently, across centuries and different writers and different circumstances, tells us something that the church has often failed to say clearly. God is not surprised by the darkness. He is not disappointed. He does not wait for the person to recover before he shows up. He shows up in the darkness itself. The most striking depression account in the entire Bible belongs to Elijah, and the context makes it even more striking. 1 Kings 18. Elijah has just experienced the greatest spiritual victory of his life. On Mount Carmel, he stood alone against 450 prophets of Baal, called down fire from heaven, and watched God vindicate his name in front of the entire nation. The crowd fell on their faces. Yahweh, he is God. It is the spiritual high point of his ministry, possibly of any prophet's ministry. And then within 24 hours, a single threat from Queen Jezebel sent him running for his life into the desert. 1 Kings 19-4. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Stop there. This is not a man who has walked away from God. He is praying. He is talking to God. But what he is praying for is death. The exhaustion is total. The desire to continue is gone. The darkness is complete. And God's response to this prayer for death is the most important thing in the entire passage. God does not rebuke him. God does not say, "Get up, stop being dramatic, where is your faith?" God sends an angel, twice, with food and water. 1 Kings 19-5. Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." The first response of heaven to Elijah's depression is not theology. It is bread and water, sleep and food. Physical provision for a physically and emotionally depleted human being. The angel's words in verse 7 are among the most tender in the entire Bible. Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you. Not, your faith is too small. Not, you should not feel this way. The journey is too great for you. God acknowledges the weight is real. He validates the exhaustion, and he provides for the body before he addresses the soul. God meets Elijah in his depression not with correction but with care. Physical, practical, human care. And only after that care, only after the sleep and the food and the strength that came from them does God speak. On the mountain, in the still small voice. The still small voice does not come first. The bread comes first. We have already spent time with Psalm 88 inches this series, but in the context of depression, it deserves its own moment. Psalm 88 is the darkest psalm in the entire Psalter. It begins in darkness. It ends in darkness. The final word in Hebrew is darkness, Hoshek. The psalmist is a man named Heman the Ezrahite, and what he writes reads like the interior monologue of someone in the depths of what we would today recognize as clinical depression. Verse 3. I am overwhelmed with troubles, and my life draws near to death. verse 8. You have taken from me my closest friends and have made me repulsive to them, verse 14. Why, Lord, do you reject me and hide your face from me, verse 18. Darkness is my closest friend. There is no resolution, no verse 19 where everything turns, no conclusion that arrives at praise. The psalm ends exactly where it began, in darkness. And it is in the Bible. That is the most important sentence about Psalm 88. God did not edit it out. He did not require the psalmist to arrive somewhere before, including his prayer in the scripture. He preserved the unresolved darkness exactly as it was written. What this means for the person in depression is almost impossible to overstate. Your experience is in the book. The darkness that does not resolve, the prayer that does not feel answered, the sense that God has hidden his face. This is not outside the scope of scripture. It is inside it. God himself preserved it. Psalm 88 is not a psalm for people who have lost their faith. It is a psalm for people whose faith is the only thing keeping them in the conversation at all. The psalmist is still talking to God at the end of the psalm, still addressing him, still in relationship. Even when the relationship feels like absence, depression does not end your relationship with God. It changes what the conversation sounds like. And Psalm 88 is proof that God accepts that conversation exactly as it is. Jeremiah is called the weeping prophet. Not as a criticism, as a description. His book is the longest in the Bible, and it contains passages of such raw emotional anguish that they have a name. The Confessions of Jeremiah, chapters 11 through 20. Personal laments that Jeremiah addressed directly to God. Jeremiah 20:14 and 18. Cursed be the day I was born. Why did I ever come out of the womb to see trouble and sorrow, and to end my days in shame? Jeremiah is cursing the day of his birth. He is expressing a desire for non-existence. Not because he has abandoned God. The same chapter contains some of the most confident declarations of trust in the entire book. Jeremiah 20:11. But the Lord is with me like a mighty warrior. Both things are present simultaneously. The darkness and the trust. The desire for non-existence and the confidence in God's presence. This is not contradiction. This is what real faith in real darkness looks like. Jeremiah did not separate his anguish from his prayer. He brought it directly into the conversation. He said to God the most unsayable things, the rage, the confusion, the wish that he had never existed, and God did not terminate the relationship. Jeremiah's ministry lasted over 40 years after he wrote these words. God did not disqualify him from service because of his depression. God did not reassign the task to someone more spiritually stable. He kept using the man who wept. He kept speaking through the man who cursed the day of his birth. The depression did not end Jeremiah's calling. It was part of the landscape the calling moved through. Paul is the person most people least expect to find in this conversation. But 2 Corinthians 1-8 and 9. We do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death, despaired of life itself, far beyond our ability to endure. This is Paul, the man who wrote Philippians 4-6, the man who said, I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. Writing from a different season, in a different letter, that he despaired of life itself, not as a contradiction of Philippians, as evidence of its truth. The peace Paul described in Philippians was not the absence of darkness. It was what he found inside the darkness, the God who met him there. Paul did not edit his experience to protect his authority. He did not pretend that being an apostle meant immunity from the weight that crushes. He told the Corinthians the truth, this was beyond my ability to endure, and then he told them why it was allowed. 2 Corinthians 1-9. This happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. Not, this happened because your faith was too small. This happened so that you would learn where the actual ground is, the ground that holds when everything else gives way. The God who raises the dead, who specializes in bringing life back from places where life appeared to be over. So what does the Bible actually say about depression? 4 things drawn from everything we have just traced. First, depression is not a faith failure. Every person we looked at, Elijah, Heman, Jeremiah, Paul, was in active relationship with God when they experienced what we would recognize as depression. The darkness did not indicate distance. It was part of the journey, not evidence that the journey had ended. Second, God's first response is often physical. Before the theology, before the mission, before the still small voice, God sent bread and water to Elijah. Before addressing the soul, God addressed the body. If you are in depression, taking care of your body is not a failure to trust God. It is following the pattern God Himself established. Sleep, food, movement, professional help. These are not replacements for faith. They are the bread and water God sent first. Third, the unresolved darkness is allowed. Psalm 88 is in the canon. God preserved the prayer that does not arrive anywhere. You do not have to manufacture resolution you have not yet received. You do not have to perform recovery for the people around you. The conversation with God in the middle of the darkness, whatever it sounds like, however raw, however unresolved, is a valid prayer. It is in the book. Fourth, the darkness does not end the calling. Jeremiah kept prophesying, Paul kept writing, Elijah went back to his work. The depression was part of the story, not the end of it. What God was building in those lives was being built through the dark seasons as much as through the bright ones. And one more thing that is harder to say but needs to be said. If you are in depression, please talk to someone. Not instead of God, alongside God. A doctor, a counselor, a trusted person who can sit with you in the dark the way God sat with Elijah under the broom bush. The Bible shows us a God who uses human hands to provide the bread and water. Let someone provide it. There is a detail about Elijah under the broom bush that is easy to rush past. After the angel brought bread and water, and Elijah ate and slept and ate again after the physical provision, Elijah traveled for 40 days to Mount Horeb, the mountain of God, and when he arrived, God asked him a question. 1 Kings 19-9. What are you doing here, Elijah? Not a rebuke, a question. God wanting to hear where Elijah actually was. God inviting the full, honest, unfiltered answer. And Elijah gave it. I have been very zealous for the Lord. I am the only one left, and they are seeking my life to take it. Every element of that answer is either inaccurate or exaggerated. The zealous part is true. The only one left is not there were 7,000 in Israel who had not bowed to Baal. The theology is shaky. The perspective is distorted by exhaustion and darkness. And God does not correct the theology first. He takes Elijah outside the cave. He lets the wind and the earthquake and the fire pass. And then comes the still small voice. And he asks the same question again. What are you doing here, Elijah? Because the God who meets people in depression is not waiting for the distorted perspective to be corrected before he shows up. He is not waiting for the theology to be accurate before he speaks. He is present in the cave. He is asking the question that invites honest answer. He is staying in the conversation until the person inside the darkness is ready to hear the still small voice. And when Elijah was ready, fed, rested, met, God gave him the next thing. Not the full picture, just the next thing. Go back the way you came. Anoint Hazael, anoint Jehu, anoint Elisha. One step, then another, then another. The path out of the dark cave is not taken all at once. It is taken one step at a time, with the God who is already in the cave, who was there before you arrived, who will still be there when you are ready to move. That is what the Bible actually says about depression. Not, you should not be here. Not, your faith is not enough. What are you doing here? And then, here is the bread, here is the water. The journey is too great for you, and I am not going anywhere. If this helped you or someone you know, share it. Not as a sermon, as the thing you wish someone had said sooner. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Leave a comment, even one word. And if you are in the cave right now, the God who met Elijah, there is the same God who is present with you. He is not waiting for you to feel better before he shows up. He is already there, with bread, with water, with a question that wants your honest answer. God bless you.